Hello, I'm EnterElysium and welcome to EE's Advent Calendar, where I'm going to recommend a game a day for the entire of Advent. So today I'm going to recommend you From the Depths. Now, strictly, I'm meant to be recommending games that have just come out or have just come out in early access. From the Depths actually came out in early access in 2014 and is still currently in early access, and doesn't look like it will be leaving early access anytime soon. However, I only came across it this year, and frankly, I made up the rules so I can change them. I'm going to include From the Depths because I love it. So From the Depths is a voxel building game, but also includes strategy elements. So like games like Minecraft, you build using cubes. However, the difference is that you have some underlying resources. You have stuff like oil, wood, metal, crystal, etc. And you can use those to build blocks, different types of blocks. So you can build, say, a wooden block, a 1x1x1, or you could build a alloy metal slope, which is 1x4x1, or whatever. And you can also then make more complicated blocks, including stuff like turret blocks, laser blocks, missile blocks. And this is where the game comes into its best, because it is a combat voxel building strategy game. And the strategy part comes in really the game mode that is the only game mode to really talk about with this game, which is the campaign mode. So the campaign mode takes place on a map, and you start off in the corner with a very small base and a very small boat. And by collecting resources in these resource zones, you can then build more stuff. You can build more blocks, you can build new ships with the blocks, you can build aircraft with the blocks, you can build submarines with the blocks, you can build blimps, you can build helicopters, you can build hydrofoils, you can build a lot, you can build tanks, you can build a lot of stuff. And using those resources, you can build stuff to be able to defend yourself against attacks by certain factions, and then you can take the fight to the factions, try and wipe out the factions, and then continue on to attack other factions and try and dominate the entire map. So that is basically how it works, in that you get resources, use the resources to build more blocks, which, you know, can be a new ship, can be an aircraft, whatever. Your imagination can do quite a lot of things in this game. And then you can use those to fight combat. So it is a game which has a lot of creativity and possibility in it, and I absolutely love that. And it uses it in a strategic sense, whereas you actually have, you know, you don't just take them for a fight or whatever. You actually have AIs that can, you know, control them for you, so you can have a fleet in combat, and you can use a fleet to fight an enemy fleet, and then you can try and push around the strategic map, taking over different parts and different resource zones. And it's a game that is currently consistently in development. They're constantly adding new things, and we'll get to its early access model a little bit later, but it's a game that I utterly really enjoy. Really enjoy this game. I have spent probably about 400 hours, if not more. I would say that Steam's telling me about 400. I think it's lowballing it, and I've only known this game for a few months. I really enjoy this game because it really just combines the things that I like: the sandboxy sort of setting, the creativity, with sort of combat and different types of, you know, you can do aircraft, you can do ships, you can do submarines or whatever, in addition to having a strategic element. And that is something that is really cool. And there's enough different types of weapons and enough different types of counters to different types of weapons that you can really let your imagination do a lot of things. So that's really how the game works. I mean, you've got different types of weapons, so you can have lasers, you can have missiles, you can have guns. There's also a few different types of guns. You can ram people with ramming spikes. You can do a lot of different things. There are even drills if you want to try and just charge an enemy and drill through the side of their ship, a la the bad guy's weapon in Tomorrow Never Dies. There is so many possibilities to this game that is probably the biggest reason that I would say it is an amazing game. Now, in terms of performance, it is early access, and the performance is a little bit on the patchy side. Being, you know, a Unity physics-based game, it does tend to use just one core at the moment in terms of its physics processing, which can slow it down, and it's a very physics-intensive game. So you can find that larger combats can, well, they can crash the game if you take a very large combat, but in general, they will slow the game down a fair bit, especially if you're not running on a particularly fast PC. However, you can limit the number of people in the battle, and basically, when something's destroyed, more blocks, more ships, more aircraft can be spawned in, so that you can limit the amount coming into combat. However, it does put a little bit of a dampener on the large fights if you can't really get as many in as you want. In terms of performance, in terms of its early access, early access is adding things and improving things all the time. In terms of stuff like the engine system is currently undergoing a major revamp. Very recently, advanced cannons were added, which were sort of a more advanced sort of step forwards in terms of what you can do, and a bit more balanced than the previous custom cannons, which also allowed you to customize how your guns work to quite a large extent. But, however, there are a few problems with these. For instance, the advanced cannons themselves had a pretty impactful problem with the shell casings, in that if you could see a lot of shells in their clips, I don't know why, but that takes up a lot of system resources to the point that the frame rate just slows down to a bog. Like, really gets really low if you have a lot of them on screen, and that is being fixed in the future, in a future update. However, it is a point to note out that we are seeing things like engines, which already exist, are being improved again. Cannons, which we already had custom cannons, are being improved into advanced cannons, and then advanced cannons need tweaking in a future update. So it's a game that it's only got a very small dev crew. I think it's maybe one guy and a couple of others helping him. And in terms of its early access model, I don't know if I would say I expect this game to come out of early access. It's already been in early access for a while. It was recently in a Steam sale, actually, just a week ago, for about £6 or your regional equivalent. Normally it's about £15 or your regional equivalent. And I just don't expect, with the pace of the game development and the cost involved, that it'll be able to keep up development until it's finished. That said, it's a very fun game as it currently is. I've put so many hours in, and it's still in early access. It's a game that I think is considered perfectly playable right now. Preferably if you've got a faster machine, but, you know, if you've got a medium-line machine, you could probably do it just with smaller battles or whatever. But you just have to bear that in mind. So bear in mind that when I say this is an early access game, and, you know, I tend to review early access games or recommend them based on what they currently offer with a little bit of view to the future. My view to the future on this game is, I don't know if it will be coming out. This is a game where I like it. In fact, I love this game, but I wouldn't say that I expect it to come out fully released. I would probably put my odds on about 50-50, maybe 40-60, of it actually coming out as a full release. And by full release, I don't just mean coming out and then still not being finished, like quite a few games are opting to do these days. I mean, actually, you know, everything being polished and all the T's being crossed and all the I's being dotted. It is a game that I would thoroughly recommend to you, and I would say that there are a lot of episodes of it on my channel. If you have not seen it already, it might be something that you want to look for. I mean, if you like my content, then you probably have the same views on games as me, and you might want to have a check it out. But From the Lips is a game that I really enjoy, would thoroughly recommend. There are so many different options, and there's so much your creativity can go wild with this game. If the enemy are packing lasers, you might go, right, well, I can't really use fighters because lasers are instant travel time. The fighters can't really dodge them very easily. Right, so what do? I could go for submarines because lasers don't really go through the water very well. And if you go to the very far end of it, there are things like Lua blocks, which use a code, it might be a scripting language, I think, called Lua, which actually allows you to sort of devise trajectories and guidance programs for missiles or AIs for your ships and stuff, more so than the basic in-game AIs, and allows you to do even more in terms of creativity and what you can do as a player, which is amazing. Another downside, however, is that it is a game where the learning curve is... I would call it a learning cliff. I think it's one of those games where instead of just being a learning curve, it is a learning cliff. It is very hard to get into. Possibly one of the best ways of getting into it is, unfortunately, to actually watch people playing the game and talking about how to get into it, and maybe watching a couple of tutorials on YouTube. I do tend to, I know I'm a YouTuber and I'm not meant to say this, but I prefer it if I can figure out how to play a game without YouTube. But it is a game where it is so very, very hard and complicated in terms of just diving in, that you will probably need to watch a few YouTube videos. But I would say it's still worth it. And another thing is that its UI is, well, functional. It can be a little bit much. It certainly hasn't been designed with much UI design in mind. It's a bit rudimentary. A lot of the information that pops on the screen there's a lot of information that obscures the screen sometimes. A lot of the hotkeys just aren't intuitive either. Stuff like pressing N twice to be able to actually detach the camera from whatever you are currently on. That's just not intuitive, and it isn't disclosed anywhere, so you just have to learn that from watching someone telling you on YouTube. But in general, despite all those problems, I would say I absolutely adore this game. The only reason I couldn't rate this game higher would be because of, I don't know if it will come out of early access. It does have some technical failings, and the UI isn't amazing. But I really, really recommend this game. I couldn't give it more than an 8 because of its technical failings. I would say it solidly gets the maximum I could give it, which would probably be something like an 8. But despite that, despite it being 8 out of 10, if this is your game, it doesn't matter. You will want to play it. If this is a game you will like, if this is the sort of stuff you like, you will want to play it no matter its failings, provided it will run on your computer and you can get past the learning cliff. Once you get past the learning cliff, it is so incredibly enjoyable and it will blow you away. There is also other modes, including a sandbox and a story mode, but in general, the main meat of the entire thing is the campaign. I've been EnterElysium, and of course I have a lot From the Depths on my channel. If you want me to cover more From the Depths in future, say so. It probably won't make much difference because I already cover it quite a lot. But yeah, if you've enjoyed this little recommendation, like, if not subscribed, please consider subscribing. And I'll continue bringing you some more recommendations. And yes, people have commented that most of the recommendations so far are games that have appeared on my channel. The reason is, most of the games I play are on my channel because I don't have time to do any other games. All my gaming is done on my channel, effectively. There will be a couple that maybe you don't expect. But anyway, I've been EnterElysium, and stay shiny.